888-971-SAGE is the number. Now, I was saying last hour that the con that the Democrats, the left, the media are pulling over blacks, the systemic racism, diverts attention from the real issue. And the real issue is what's going on with our families, absent fathers, and the crappy education people are getting K through 12. Democrats' hands are on both of these issues. In this movie called The Sting, where they were pulling a scam on somebody, wanted to make sure the bad guy never knew he got taken. So Paul Newman is explaining to Robert Redford exactly what they must do in order to pull this scheme off.
Can't do it alone, you know. Takes a mob of guys like you and enough money to make them look good.
I know plenty of guys.
It's not like playing winos in the street. You can't outrun
I never played for no winos.
You gotta keep his con even after you take his money. He can't know you took him.
You got to keep his con even after you take his money. He can't even know that you took him. That is why people call my show misguided people, many of whom are black, yelling and screaming, calling me an Uncle Tom and a sellout and this, that, and the other. Why? For simply suggesting, as Tim Scott did, as Orlando Patterson did back in the early 90s, that racism is no longer a major issue in America. The major issue in America are absent fathers, followed by absent fathers, followed by absent fathers, particularly a problem in the black community. And the left is so adept at pulling this con that the very victims of the breakdown of the family have been convinced that the reason for their suffering, the reason for their trouble, the reason for this gap between what they have and what others have is because of systemic racism. And anybody that says otherwise, who's black as an Uncle Tom, anybody who says otherwise, if they're white, they are, of course, racist. Brilliant. People who call my show and call me these kinds of names are being used, scammed for votes on the part of the Democrats and ratings on the part of CNN, MSNBC, Hee-Haw, and they don't even know they're being taken. That's the genius of what the Democrats are doing.
Can't do it alone, you know. Takes a mob of guys like you and enough money to make them look good.
I know plenty of guys.
It's not like playing winos in the street. You can't outrun
I never played for no winos.
You gotta keep his con even after you take his money. He can't know you took him.
Now, as you guys know, when I make my arguments, I always try to corroborate them using left-wing sources. That way, people can't call up and say, well, that's just Fox News. That's just Breitbart. That's just holding in my baby brown libertarian fingers. And Mr. McConnell, make sure we put this up on LarryElder.com. 3 simple rules poor teens should follow to join the middle class. By Ron Haskins, who's a researcher with the Brookings Institution. Not Heritage, not Cato, not the American Enterprise Institution. Brookings, a center-left think tank that is clearly one of the most prestigious, one of the best endowed think tanks in the country. Headline, 3 simple rules poor teens should follow to join the middle class. He talks about all the programs that are done, state and federal. Quote, in addition to the thousands of local and national programs that aim to help young people avoid these life-altering problems, we should figure out more ways to convince young people that their decisions will greatly influence whether they avoid poverty and enter the middle class. Let me read that again. We should figure out more ways to convince young people that their decisions will greatly influence whether they avoid poverty and enter the middle class. Again, this is written by a researcher with the Brookings Institution, which is a left-wing think tank. They say they're center. They say center-left. I say left-wing. But certainly they're not conservative. He continues, let politicians, school teachers, and administrators, community leaders, ministers, and parents drill into children the message that in a free society, they enter adulthood with 3 major responsibilities. 1, at least finish high school. 2, get a full-time job. 3, wait until age 21 to get married and have children. He continues, our research shows that of American adults who follow these 3 simple rules, only about 2% are in poverty and nearly 75% have joined the middle class. Today, he writes, more than 40% of American children, including more than 70% of black children and 50% of Hispanic children, are born outside of marriage. This unprecedented rate of non-marital births, combined with the nation's high divorce rate, means that around half of children will spend part of their childhood, and for a considerable number of these, all of their childhood, in a single-parent family. As hard as single parents try to give their children a healthy home environment, children in female-headed families are 4 or more times as likely as children from married couples to live in poverty. In turn, poverty is associated with a wide range of negative outcomes in children, including school dropout and out-of-wedlock births, end of quote. He concludes the article by saying this: if the mother wants to improve her future by continuing her education, being a teenage parent is precisely the wrong way to do it. As for blaming the victim, no one is blaming the baby, yet the baby will also bear long-term consequences. Teenagers are capable of understanding principles and of using them to help make decisions. Anyone who delivers messages to teens about the consequences of decisions that could affect them and others for many years should be praised, not criticized, end of quote, says Ron Haskins, Senior Fellow Emeritus, Economic Studies, Brookings Institution. Or, as Denzel Washington put it,
well, it starts in the home. You know, if the father's not in the home, the boy will find the father in the streets. Yeah, I saw it in my generation and every generation before me and everyone since. It starts in the home. You know, if the streets raise you, then the judge becomes your mother, and, you know, and prison becomes your home.
Tupac Shakur said the same thing, different words.
I hate saying this because white people love hearing black people talk about this. I know for a fact that had I had a father, I'd have had some discipline. I'd have had more confidence. Your mother cannot calm you down the way a man can. Your mother can't reassure you the way a man can. You know, my mother couldn't show me where my manhood was. So you need a man to teach you how to be a man.
It doesn't sound like he'd be supporting the Black Lives Matter attack on the nuclear intact family, does it? Rapper Cujo says that when he grew up in Atlanta, he would hang out in an area called The Traps, where they sold drugs. This is an area, he said, where men without fathers would hang out and sell drugs to people who look like them.
At home, Cujo was raised, along with his younger brother, by a single mom.
We stayed out for 1365 Wichita Drive. That was a house that my uncle was renting out to my mom at the time. And it was a prominent black neighborhood where people had money.
But my mom still had to work, you know what I'm saying, a couple jobs, so it left me and my brother to raise each other. But when he wasn't in school or writing rhymes, Cujo was part of a drug scene in southwest Atlanta known as The Traps.
The Trap is a place where black men that don't have fathers come and congregate and sell drugs to people that look like them. I found myself being a part of that cycle right there.
3 simple rules poor teens should follow to join the middle class. Let politicians, school teachers, administrators, community leaders, ministers, and parents drill into their children the message that in a free society they enter adulthood with 3 major responsibilities. Finish high school, get a full-time job, wait until age 21 to get married and have children. I'm Larry Elder.